Am I introing or you? I guess
You
I'll
can introduce us, and then also, guess what? We got married.
Sure. Hey YouTube! Once again, my name is Robert. Welcome to the channel. Today I'm joined by my wonderful wife,
Hannah.
and we
Just got married.
got married. So for those of you new to the channel, we went through the whole process through K1, through adjusting status to green card. We created a video last January detailing what we put into our K1 packet. So for those of you returning, hopefully you're halfway through the process yourselves at this point, and we can give you some tips of what to expect in the near future. But as I said, from last January to just last week, I received my green card. So from January 2019 to January 2020, it took that long to get the green card.
Worth the wait.
It was worth the wait for sure. Our sort office was in Kansas City, so obviously times will change depending on where you are in the United States. But we're here today to explain the whole process from the K1 all the way through to the final green card interview, and maybe we'll talk a little bit about our marriage later. So after filing my K1 visa, I'll talk about this bit because it was in England. I waited 2 or 3 months, and then they started to transfer my case around America, and I got sent to the National Visa Center, then transferred onto the embassy. I booked a medical appointment in London a couple of weeks before the interview date, so mid-June 2019. Then I had my interview at the British Embassy, at the US Embassy in London on July 1st. The embassy itself was really nice. It was a really easy interview. The main problem was I had to wait a long time. I think everybody kind of went on lunch at that point, so I waited over 2 hours. So leave yourself some room to go to your own embassy. They asked me some super simple questions about how I met my wife and what she does as a job, and just questions that you wouldn't get wrong if you're a legitimate couple, so there's nothing to worry about. Financial wise, what did I go with?
The affidavit of support form. I had my last 3 years tax returns, last 4 pay stubs, letter from my employer that said how much I made when I was working there, and kind of basically they have no plan of terminating me. I had just graduated and got that job right before we filed the K1 last January, so I didn't really have a lot of proof that I was making money to support him. So we had asked my dad to co-sponsor us, and he filled out all that form, gave the same evidence, tax returns, just bank account statements and paychecks. And then when he went to his K1 interview, they didn't ask for any of the co-sponsor information, and so my dad was happy and I was able to support him. I was kind of surprised. I was making that money, I just didn't think we had enough proof, but clearly they were happy with what we had brought.
Yeah, they just asked for the affidavit form and I think the employee letter, and that was it. And at the interview they gave us a lot of the evidence we initially submitted back, but I wouldn't guarantee that in your case. So if you might get some pictures back, you might not. But anyway, past interview, they told me on the spot they were giving me the visa. 1 week later, I got my passport back with the visa printed in it. Then on August 1st, 2019, I flew to America.
Then I had to quickly plan a wedding because you only have 90 days.
So I came in through Atlanta. The lines were super long because I guess everyone was going to Disneyland via Atlanta. It's kind of annoying. They just took the sealed packet they give you. They take you through to secondary, and they just ask you some real simple questions again. They ask you what your intentions are in America, and obviously you're there to marry someone. They ask you if you're sure. But at that point, you're at the finishing line of the K1, so you'd have to do something really bad to mess up. So again, don't worry. So yeah, I entered America, flew to meet my wife, well, then fiance, and then 10 days later, we got married. And you already saw the other pictures. There's another one of us. So because we only had 90 days, we went to a courthouse, right?
Yeah, I emailed a lot of judges, and then I finally found one that could do a weekend with us. I think he charged $150 cash, which wasn't bad with how big of a rush we were in. I got my flowers at Hy-Vee, and I made his boutonniere. I got my dress for $130 at David's Bridal. My veil was on sale for $15. He already had that suit, and then one of well, we're both friends with them now, but two of my close friends from growing up, they came over and they were our witnesses. You have to have two in the state of Kansas. The only downside is you have to wait 3 days for your marriage. What's it called?
Certificate.
No, not the certificate.
License.
Yeah. The only downside is you have to wait 3 days for your marriage license. In other states, it's different. I know, like, Wisconsin was a 5-day waiting period, and both people have to be present to sign that. So before he got here, I went in and I submitted the application because you only need one person. Then when he landed, we went in and we signed it together, and then got the courthouse wedding. We hired a photographer for $100. It was a really fun, nice ordeal.
Yeah, and you gotta, the moment you land in America, you gotta think about evidence for your green card. So I would recommend getting a photographer, even if it's a small courthouse wedding. It's really, really good evidence to prove that you're a legitimate couple.
And take pictures with other people.
Yeah, same as in the K1. You just need pictures of other people to kind of reaffirm the fact that, you know, it's not just you two. There's other people involved in the relationship.
We didn't have our parents come to that because we were planning a wedding for this year in 2020. Obviously, you don't really know when you're going to get married and you only have 90 days. So we just agreed, but our families were cool with it. They're like, yeah, we're going to have the big to-do wedding in the summer. They were really happy with that. And we had a really nice, intimate, small courthouse wedding. It was really sweet. Got a chocolate little Hy-Vee cake, got our own flowers, had a really nice dinner.
Yeah, so yeah, we got married, signed the license, and then I had to drive and get the certificates, which is another ordeal. This is a mistake we made. Make sure everything's spelled correctly because they spelt my middle name wrong. And I ended up having to drive 2 hours, 3 days in a row to a courthouse in Topeka, Kansas for them to change my middle name. They didn't really know the rules and they kept like sending me away with misinformation, so make sure everything's right on the form before you accept it, basically.
Yeah, and sometimes it pays to talk to someone higher up. Don't just let them dismiss you because you have a different accent and they don't want to deal with you.
So yeah, we got the marriage certificate sorted. We had a load of official ones, which then allowed me to go to Social Security, which is another really, really important thing to do. So they advise you to wait 2 weeks after entering the country before you go to Social Security, which gives you enough time to get married, etc. Because your name needs to be updated on the computer system, so you should wait 2 weeks.
It's a long wait when you're in the office.
Yeah, so we went along and I managed to get my Social Security number, which came in the mail a week later. It's the number, but above it says not valid without work authorization, so you can't usually get a job. Then in the state of Kansas, it really sucks. I tried to get a driver's license because a lot of places you'll find require state ID. Like at a bank, I tried to add myself to my wife's bank account, which had all my money in it, but they wouldn't accept it because I didn't have a state ID, and they wouldn't accept my passport. Then the DMV wouldn't let me get a license because I was within 60 days of my I-94 expiring. So you get 90 days when you initially enter the country to get married, and the DMV won't let you apply for a license in the state of Kansas unless it's over 60 days. So that's kind of a roadblock that we ran into early there. Then they told me that I could drive for a year on my British license, but they couldn't be sure. So if you're planning on driving, really research your state's laws and try and talk to them. But we found even at the DMV in Kansas, they weren't even aware of the law for foreign people, which is really frustrating.
We had to Google a lot of the laws ourselves and print them off just because we were afraid if an officer pulls us over, he might not know. So we were just really cautious about it, but he was able to drive. They wouldn't allow him to add to my insurance, my car insurance, because they wanted his driving record, which they said by the time they got that back, he'd probably have his green card. So my insurance did let him drive without his name being on it. So I bought a second car, let him drive it, but it was under my own insurance. We had to fight the banks to get him on, but they did eventually add him. Another hard part was our lease agreement. We kind of had to fight that one, but
because they want state ID as well. They want like proof that you're in Kansas. And
they want to background check you. So I can understand why, but it's frustrating because you guys know the process is so long, so hard, and then you just hit roadblock after roadblock.
Yeah, after you
And-
arrive in America, it sucks. So be prepared to be set back. I mean, whilst you're waiting to adjust status, you're not going to be in any rush anyway, so don't worry about it. You can't work anyway, so just don't get down. Eventually it all works out. So we got that. I was driving around without a license technically. I never got pulled over, so I guess I never really found out if I could or not.
Without a U.S. license.
Yeah, I had a British license. So what I did actually do is I drove around with my passport in the car at all times, which had my visa in it and the visa stamp, the date that I entered America, so that if any police officer had to go at me, I could be like, well, I entered America on this date, here's the proof. Anyway, we did that, and then got married August 10th. Then in mid-September, around September 11th, we submitted our I-485 as well as our EAD work permit at the same time through US Post. And basically, we made a little video, but I don't really know how to blur stuff out, so Hannah's just going to run through what we submitted in that packet. The packet's not as thick as the K1. You don't need to send off evidence at this point. You don't need to send off like photographic or relationship evidence. You need to send off like hard evidence of numbers and like, well, you run through it basically. What do they need to do?
The first thing we had was a cashier's check. So the prices I've heard might be changing, so make sure to double check that. We paid $1,445 for the I-485 form fee, and we also paid for the $85 biometric fee in one.
Yeah, don't do two checks, just one. Add those two numbers together.
Then we had a cover letter. Basically, it was like, I, Robert, entered the U.S., married my now wife Hannah on a K1 visa. As a result of this, please find my AOS application and I-765 work authorization application and further supporting evidence. Then we had our e-notification, G1145.
Same as the K1, same form.
And then we had our I-485 application, which
It's just a ton of
takes
questions.
a while
yeah.
to go through it, but be
Yeah.
thorough.
Be thorough, and then I mean, we never used a lawyer, so we don't think you need to use one. Just be thorough. Just take your time, answer the questions. Basically, half the I-485 are yes/no questions anyway, so just they're not very hard, and just make sure you spell everything right, basically.
Make sure you have your financial numbers correct as well.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the main thing they're gonna look at, the finances. So.
Then we had scans of his passport, especially the bio page, the visa with the visa stamp.
That's a requirement. You need to submit that. So yeah, the bio page and the visa with the stamp in it.
Then we had his birth certificate with 2 passport pictures we printed out. We had a copy of the I-94 admission record.
If you don't know what that is, it's every time you enter America, you get an I-94 number assigned to you. All you got to do is go online, type in I-94 form. Then basically what you just do is you type in your passport number, because it's basically linked when you enter the country to the I-94 number, and then you'll just get a page. It tells you the date you entered the country, etc., and what time.
Then we had an original copy of our marriage certificate, which I think we paid like $20 for to make sure it's certified. We also had evidence of our ceremony. We included like 5 pictures of our wedding. I also made him a sign when he arrived at the airport. We had a picture of us together when he arrived.
I mean, that's not a requirement. You're not required to submit any like relationship evidence. Where we just a couple of pictures, it doesn't hurt, and we stuck one on the front page of the application as well. But you don't need to upload put 200 photos in. This is not necessary.
Then we had his vaccination records. Then we had my affidavit of support, the I-864, which when I was doing the K1 process, I was very confused. There's 2 different affidavit forms. The AOS is the I-864. I included my last 3 years of tax returns, proof of my U.S. citizenship, so my birth certificate copy. I had another letter from my employer, bank balance, my statements, my last 4 paychecks, which at that point I had been working at my job for nearly a year, so I had a lot more evidence. Then we had our NOA-1, the I-797. Then we had his employment authorization, the I-765.
That's just another real simple form. Basically the same information. But I advise filing them all at the same time because the work authorization and the advanced parole are actually free if you file them at the same time as the I-485. I didn't bother applying for advanced parole because I knew I wasn't leaving the country, so I did the employment authorization. It is free, so you might as well just do it at the same time.
The evidence he included was his passport bio, 2 passport pictures, his K1 visa and stamp, the I-94 entry, and then the I-797. Then for our interview...
Yeah, so, well, we sent that off. We got an NOA1 text message like 5 days later. Maybe within 2 weeks we got the hard copies, so one for the work employment, one for the I-485, you know, the NOA1 sheets. Then it was the long kind of wait. It was it was a month, so it was about September 16th we got the NOA1. Around about the same time in October, mid-October, I had to go up to Kansas City to get my biometrics appointment done. Biometrics is super easy. You're in there like 5-10 minutes. They just take your fingerprints, take your picture, and they get you to sign on the computer, so they have a record of your signature. That's it. You go away again, then that's the longest wait between doing your biometrics and waiting for them to give you a date for your interview. It's the longest wait. So we waited until about, I think it was November the 11th. It updated online. There's a case tracker app you can download. I'll leave a link in the description to that. And it told me that they were ready to schedule my appointment, my interview. But from then we had to wait another like month and a half for them to actually give us the date. So maybe around the 20th of December they finally said, okay, we have a date for you. And they scheduled us for January the 16th, 2020, which was nice because I had my family here over Christmas, so we didn't have to worry about them being there at the same time. They went home.
It was plenty of time to get our evidence together as well and prepare for the interview.
They give you like a month, and then and they send you a list of everything they require. It's very thorough. You got to have it all. So we went back to Kansas City, the same place I did my biometrics at. It might be different for you guys depending on where you are in America. So we went in, you go through, basically you're required to bring your wife if you're doing a green card interview with K1, which is obvious.
Or husband.
Or husband, yeah. And then you go through airport style security, you're not allowed your phone, you're not allowed water, although they're pretty nice where we were. And then you go in, and then you sign in, and then we were pretty quick. The guy came and got us, and he took us like around back into like a private office area. So the first thing we did was we went in there and we did an oath. So we stood up with our right hands up and just declared that everything we're about to say was true and correct. And then we sat down, and like from the outset, it was really laid back, wasn't it? It was.
Yeah, we had a really good experience with our interview. It was very laid back. He was very pleasant, very nice. We never felt like threatened or nervous. I think he could tell we were genuine. And we had so much evidence, which I'll share with you what we've all brought. Yeah,
it was just a conversation. He just like broke it down. He said they're there for 3 reasons, like to make sure everything on the I-485 was still like correct. He wanted to like confirm that we were still in a relationship and we were married and
legit. Yeah,
basically. I don't remember what the third one was, but it was basically for the first 10 minutes of the 25 minute interview, he just went through every single thing on the I-485 to make sure nothing had changed.
Like his address, his name, does he go by any nicknames?
Yeah, and then he went through every single yes or no answer, like were you ever a terrorist and stuff, but he answered no to, and he just double checking, and he kept like making jokes. We were really laid back, and like he asked me if I was a spy, and I said no, and he went, well, you would say that, wouldn't you, haha, and it was pretty laid back and funny. There was only like one trick question. I told him that we got married on August 10th, and then when he was going through the form, he said, what did he say again?
He was just going through the form. It was right in front of him, the date we got married, but he said, oh, you got married August 11th. And we're like, no,
August 10th.
So be prepared, know your dates, know your names.
There might be 1 or 2 tricks. Like, it might change case by case. I know if they're dubious about how valid your case is, they might even separate you guys and ask the same questions in different rooms if they're really not sure. But I think because we were we didn't have any red flags, I think we were pretty smooth.
We've been dating for nearly 6 years. We've had so much evidence.
And we think if you guys are legitimate and do it properly as well, you won't have any issues either, so don't worry. This is probably not referring to you at all. So the evidence that we took with us...
well, obviously they give you a letter of what they... which We brought basically everything that's on that letter, but this is kind of stuff that he actually looked at and that we handed him. We printed a lot of pictures, especially with our family. His family was over for Christmas. It was a great opportunity. His family met my parents, so we had all those photos as well. Looked great.
We just printed them out Walgreens, just like super cheap.
Tons of pictures of our weddings, stuff, basically anything that we didn't include in the K1 to prove our current relationship. We also he got a social security card. We had a joint bank account, joint apartment lease.
And a joint credit card account as well.
Yeah, anything that kind of proves that you are in a relationship and living together.
Yeah, and it also acts as proof of residency, like you live at the same address, so everything had the address on the top, our joint bank, joint credit card, and the lease agreement. It was massive.
We also brought our save the date card for our future wedding. We also had like receipts for a venue, etc. We basically explained, hey, we did get married, but we're planning a huge family to do, so obviously still in love, excited for that.
And then I also bought like receipts. Obviously it was just Christmas. I bought her like, I don't know how much I spent on you, but I bought like receipts just in case. He didn't even ask for them. I had tons of evidence that he didn't even ask for. I tried to show him and he was like, after he'd seen the lease agreement and the bank and the social security, he said like he didn't want to see it. He'd seen enough evidence. So
yeah,
bring as much as you can, but bring as much as you can, but they're only going to ask you for probably 2 or 3 main things.
Unless you don't have a lot of evidence.
Yeah.
Better to bring too much, like he said.
Yeah.
We also brought like all of our affidavit stuff again and current evidence, like my past
bank statements,
my past pay stubs that are current. He didn't ask for any of that. We didn't hand it over. We just brought it just in case. Basically that's all he kind of asked for. The only thing we were worried about was we couldn't get him on like my car insurance. I couldn't get him on my energy bill, I believe. So we were kind of worried. Like we had what we could do, but all in all, it really worked out.
Yeah, and then we didn't even like actually say he'd approved it. He was basically like, oh, you know, you should expect to get the card in a week, and that's basically like him saying we've got it approved. He said he had to run it by a supervisor, which is a normal case. Every single case now has to be run through a supervisor before they approve it, so they're not going to give you a card right there and then.
They normally tell you they'll recommend you for approval, but ours was, he's like you'll see it in the next few weeks and your status will change online in the next few hours.
And then he basically started explaining to us, like, do we know what the next step is? So if you come in on a K1, get married and get a green card, basically in 2 years' time we have to go back again to prove we're still together after 2 years, and then they give you the 10-year green card. If you get married and wait 2 years before applying for the green card, you don't have to do that. So if you've been married 2 years before you do the adjustment of status, you get a 10-year green card straight away. I plan on making another update video in 2 years when we go through to do that next interview. I'm certainly looking to get my US citizenship in 3 years' time, so I'll definitely be making a video about that. So feel free to subscribe and look out for those videos in the future. I guess the last piece of advice we have is to check Facebook groups. They're very helpful, aren't they?
Yeah, like K1 to AOS Facebook groups. We posted a lot of questions and they're pretty helpful.
Yeah, and I also on visajourney.com, I'll post a link to my timeline on that below. That'll show the exact dates that I got everything. And there's thousands of message boards on there for you to talk to people who are going through all sorts of visas to get into America. That's extremely helpful as well. But for now, yeah, just feel free to comment below this video. I try and get to every question in a fairly timely manner. I do keep checking, so if you have any questions, feel free to drop a comment below.
Yeah, good luck to everyone who's in the same boat as us. It's a long and hard process.
Yep.
And we wish you guys good luck and thank you for all the support.
Yep, and yeah, good luck.
It's a long and hard journey, but you'll make it through and it's worth it. And he's so happy to be here in the United States.
So yeah, thanks once again. I've been Robert and this has been my wife, Hannah. Thank you.